Final Fight, the game that moved along the walk-along beat-em-up to what we know it as today. Sure, Double Dragon came first, but it was Final Fight that broke the mold. Released into the arcades from Capcom in 1989, this game, which was originally titled Street Fighter 89, tells the story of Metro City and its fight against crime. Jessica, the daughter of Mayor Haga, has been kidnapped by the Mad Gear criminal group in hope that it will allow them to do as they please within Metro City. Haga isn't having any of this, and neither is Jessica's hunky boyfriend Cody and friend Guy. All three set out to kick some ass, eat some meat from the trash, and generally show how tough they are. Each player has the basic attacks of punch, kick and throw, plus a special move that drains a little energy each time it's used. You can also pick up weapons throughout the game, ranging from daggers, iron poles and katanas. Did you know that the developers of Final Fight revealed that the game was inspired by the movie Streets of Fire from 1984? If you've seen the movie, you may find a resemblance between the characters' names and those found in Final Fight.
Oh my god!
So let's start off the ports, and we are going to do them in order of release. So the first port was released in 1990 for the Super Famicom. For this video we are going to try and use the Japanese versions of the game where possible, due to the Western ones being censored in Nintendo land. Still, even though the Japanese version has Roxy and Poison in them, they still have had their animation changed. So upon first glance, the Super Famicom version looked really good, but then you start to notice just how much was missing. This is down to the game having a small file size of 8 MB. What's funny is that in the hex code of this game you can see text for many items, such as the telephone boxes, yet they aren't present in the actual game. That's the least of the missing stuff though. One of the playable characters, Guy, is now gone. The game is also a one player only game now. The entire industrial area is missing and only 3 enemies could be on screen at once, making the game as a whole easier and less frantic than its arcade counterpart. Add in the sluggish gameplay and slowdown and it seems that the Super Famicom port of Final Fight isn't very good. Well, it would seem that way, but it was still a great game and a hell of a lot better than the crap which came out in 1991. So in 1991 Final Fight got a port to the home computers. Let's start off with the abomination that is the Amiga port. Now this version is really bad, but that is mainly down to the developer Richard Alpern at Creative Materials probably wasting more time ripping the arcade sprites than he had, which didn't leave much time for the gameplay code. Well, that, and he wasn't a fan of the arcade game anyway. But he did see the Pet Shop Boys at the NEC Arena in Birmingham according to the game code text message. So he's cool with me. Anyway, why is this version so bad? Do I really have to ask that? Just look at it. The animation is terrible, the colors are nasty, the CPU AI is a joke, and it plays like crap. Down and fire for the special move, forwards and fire to kick, up and fire to jump, and hold fire to pick stuff up. These controls just feel awful. Then there's the lack of music. Apparently developer Richard Alpern asked Creative Materials to add music to this game, but they couldn't be bothered. The only music in it was ripped off someone else, who may have not even been paid for the use of his music. No wonder the Amiga had so much shit on it when the development of this game was an acceptable situation. Holy crap, the Atari ST version is even worse than the Amiga version. I'm running this on an Atari STE and just look at it. It's the exact same code as the Amiga game but now runs with less animation. Just look at Guy's special attack. And absolutely awful scrolling. To top it all off, our ears are tortured by a constant horrible sound which they expect us to believe is music. Also in 1991 we saw the release of the 8-bit home computer ports. Let's start off with the Amstrad CPC. So the good points are that we have the arcade introduction, which looks reasonable for the CPC. The actual game is in full colour, making use of big sprites, which is great. Sadly, the game isn't great. The speed at which it runs is like running through a swamp of extra thick and extremely smelly turds. It's awfully slow, with a responsiveness that's so bad you'll be wondering if your joystick is actually plugged in. Collision detection is also bad, and boss characters are way too tough. But that's okay, because you'll be bored to tears before you even encounter one and end up switching off the game. Well, here we go with another disappointment from the untalented crowd at Creative Materials. Now, while this Commodore 64 port moves faster than the Amstrad CPC version, I don't think it plays any better. We still have poor collision detection, laggy controls, enemy patterns that don't follow the arcade, no music, cheap hits, and crappy gameplay. Even in 1991 when this came out, I would have been so disappointed. Don't forget that I had been playing Mega Drive since 1988. Man, even walk-along beat-em-ups that came out on earlier consoles blew this away. Hadn't the devs ever played a real game? Okay, let's get the crap over and done with, finishing with the ZX Spectrum port. Just like the CPC, this features nice big sprites, but what is the point in that when the game is unplayable? Seriously, if I had made this, even I would be ashamed of it, yet this garbage was released and sold for cash. It's a crime because you're basically handing people crap for their hard-earned cash. And no, this has nothing to do with the limitations of the ZX Spectrum, only the limitations of the developers. Two years after the initial Japanese Super Famicom release of Final Fight, Capcom released Final Fight Guy in 1992. Now many people think that this version of the game was a simple character swap of Cody for Guy, but there's actually so much more to it than that. For a start, there are many changes to the stages and character placement to represent the arcade version closer. 2 new items were added, a 1-up shaped like the player's character, and an invincibility icon shaped like Jessica. The neon lights for the bar club sign and the light above the door are now animated, and the bartender reading the newspaper will look in the direction of your character. Even the ending has been redrawn, as well as the intro text being rewritten, or at least in the US version. The best change in my opinion though is the tweaking of the game engine. Final Fight Guy plays much smoother than the original and doesn't suffer from slowdown anywhere near as much as the original game. This makes playing it so much more fun. While the game was only released for sale in Japan, complete with a mini CD single, it did see a US release as a Blockbuster video rental only. In July of 1992, we finally get the first arcade quality port, which came out on the Sharp X68000. This is no surprise, as it said Capcom actually used the 68000 to develop its CPS-1 games. This X68000 port emulates the arcade music pretty faithfully using the internal sound hardware. Now whether that's a good thing or not is debatable, since the arcade sounds pretty bad. However, there is another option: to connect the X68000 up to a Roland MT sound device for some much improved music. At the moment you are listening to the internal audio.
あんたはやりすぎた。街は今まで通り俺たちマッドギアの好きにさせてもらうぜ。これ以上警察を介入させるならジェシカの命はないと思いな。
ジェシカがさらわれただと。
ジェシカ？
ああ、幼なじみだ。マッドギアめ、俺がぶっ潰してやるぜ。
なんと卑怯極まりない。拙者も助太刀いたす。
待ってろ、ジェシカ。
March of 1993 saw what many would consider to be the ultimate port of Final Fight. That was Final Fight CD for the Mega CD. And what's even cooler is we are taking a look at the Pyron color hacked version, which fixes the colors to resemble the arcade port closer. This color hack was added to my own personal original Japanese Final Fight CD that I bought way back in 1992. So what makes this the ultimate version? Well, to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I mean, it doesn't look arcade perfect, although it does look excellent for a Mega CD title. Maybe it's the fantastically smooth gameplay. Or maybe it's the new arranged soundtrack. Or how about the additional time attack mode or fully voiced introduction? Or maybe just because it's a million times better than the cutback Super Famicom version. Whatever the reason may be, we have to agree that the Mega CD port of Final Fight is a good one. Skipping ahead to 2001 and we get the next port of Final Fight. No, Mighty Final Fight on the Famicom doesn't count. This is Final Fight 1 for the Gameboy Advance. What we have here is best described as a remix and boosted Super Famicom game. It uses a lot of assets, or at least assets based upon the Super Famicom Japanese version. It even keeps Nintendo's sad censorship in place during the introduction and when beating up Roxy and Poison. The gameplay is really fast though. This gives the game a nice modern feel, however the enemy AI hasn't been changed at all. It's still just as cheap as it ever was. The music is also a disappointment. Nasty grating Game Boy audio throughout as the game presents us with arrangements of the original songs. If the audio driver was better, this game could have sounded very cool. Before the age of smartphones, we had the time of Java-based phones, and in 2003, Final Fight was added to the collection. This isn't the original Japanese Java version. In fact, I'm not sure which country this was from, but I know it's not Japan because the Japanese one was way better. Sadly, it's impossible to get these days. November of 2003 saw Beats of Rage hit the world, with the most popular format being the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast scene saw many mods for Beats of Rage, including many Final Fight inspired mods. Now while this isn't an official port of Final Fight, I thought it would be welcome here. This version has limitations such as no stage transition animations and a lack of being able to pick up enemies' weapons, due to how the Beats of Rage engine works. Yet, despite this, the game still feels like Final Fight for the most part. This really is an excellent mod. There are also options to play with the Mega CD soundtrack, or use characters from other Final Fight games, such as Maki from Final Fight 2. And we're going to finish up with the 2010 release that can be found packed with Magic Sword on the Final Fight Double Impact set for Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. This is the Xbox 360 version you're seeing here, and this is the one to get, since this can be played without having to be connected to the net. At first you could be forgiven in thinking this is just an arcade ROM emulated on the Xbox 360, but it's not. It's an actual port. There are even some graphical changes here and there. We also get a selection of screen filters, but they're not that great. Playing in classic mode, as you can see here, is the way to go. The arcade cabinet option is kinda cool though. As well as graphical changes, there's also a choice of music styles. We are playing with the arranged option right now. Original music is just that from the arcade machine. Unfortunately, Proper Games who made this port thought it would be a great idea to put stupid challenge info across the bottom of the screen all of the time. I hate these, as they get in the way of the action and they can't be switched off. And let's take a look at all those versions of Final Fight running side by side.